The dragon's celestial pearl, Rurik. The dwarf traced his finger along the faded map under moonlight, squinting to make out the delicate strokes of ink that were nearly lost to time. It was a map of an ancient kingdom, one that stretched beyond the mountains and veiled forests, beyond lands known even to the oldest dwarf elders. His finger rested on a single marking near the edge of the world, a small circle labelled only with a symbol, the crescent of a waning moon. To anyone else the mark might have been nothing, a smudge, a flaw. But to Rurik, it was the promise of something beyond mortal understanding, something that held the potential to save his people. It was the mark of the celestial pearl, a mystical relic whispered of in songs sung around crackling fires, songs that hinted at hidden wisdom and powers untouched by time. He had no delusions of an easy path. Legends were born from hardship and secrecy, and this legend had roots in tales so ancient that even the forests grew silent in their presence. It was said that the celestial pearl lay guarded by a dragon, whose scales gleamed like the cosmos itself, a dragon that embodied the stars and kept the secrets of the ages. Rurik knew he couldn't face such a journey alone. Dwarves were creatures of the earth, solid and sturdy, but this quest would lead him to realms beyond the firm soil he understood. He needed someone who knew the magic of forests, the language of rivers and skies, and so he had gone in search of the elves. His journey brought him to a glade bathed in silver starlight, where an elven figure stood waiting as if drawn by the same threads of fate. Lira, daughter of the Twilight Grove, watched him with quiet curiosity, her silhouette slender and ethereal against the shimmer of the trees. She had heard of the celestial pearl as well, and unlike the dwarves, whose hearts beat in harmony with stone and fire, her kin were drawn to the living magic of the woods. For Lira, the pearl was not a means to an end, but a hope for healing, a chance to mend the frayed edges of her forest, which had begun to wilt under a shadow no one could name. She felt a tug toward the pearl as if it could reveal to her the long-hidden secrets of her people's bond with the land. They met in silence, each understanding what the other sought in their own way. Rurik offered a nod, a solemn gesture of respect, and Lira returned it with a gentle, almost sorrowful smile. The alliance between dwarves and elves was as rare as the pearl they sought, yet neither felt any doubt as they set out together, stepping into the unknown. The air grew colder as they journeyed north, the terrain changing from forested slopes to rocky plains, each mile pulling them further from their familiar lands. By nightfall, the sky hung heavy with clouds, the stars hidden as if shrouded in mourning. The road grew narrower and more treacherous, winding through silent groves and fog-laden valleys where even the shadows seemed to whisper warnings. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a mutual respect that allowed silence to fill the space between words. Rurik was a figure of earth and strength, his footsteps steady and sure even on loose stones and slick moss. Lira moved like a breath of wind, her presence a ripple of quiet grace as she slipped through thickets and over roots with ease. As the second night settled over them, they made camp under a canopy of ancient pines, their needles silvered with dew. Rurik set about making a small fire, its warmth a welcome comfort against the biting night. Lira, sitting across from him, watched the flames flicker and cast shadows that danced like spirits in the dark. "Do you believe in what we're searching for?" she asked softly, her voice almost lost in the night's stillness. Rurik's gaze didn't waver from the fire. "Belief isn't enough," he replied. "I've seen enough of this world to know that what people call myths often hold truths beyond our understanding. The celestial pearl, I think it's real. And I think it's waiting for those who seek it with purpose." Lyra's eyes reflected the firelight, her expression unreadable. "The dragon won't part with it easily," she murmured. "If it guards the pearl as they say, we may have to face trials we can't foresee." "That's why we're here together," Rurik replied, his tone steady. "What one of us can't face alone, perhaps we can face together." They fell into silence again, each contemplating the vastness of their undertaking. Around them, the forest settled, and the quiet became profound, as though the night itself was listening to the hopes and fears stirring between them. As dawn approached, they extinguished the fire and shouldered their packs. The road before them led into a fog that clung low over the land, concealing all but the faintest path forward. But they stepped into it without hesitation, bound by a purpose greater than themselves, and by the promise of a pearl that glowed with the light of the moon. The mist thickened as Rurik and Lira travelled onward, blurring the edges of the world and turning the path before them into a winding shadow. Their footsteps grew softer, swallowed by the damp earth, as though even the land wished for silence in this place. Ahead, a silvery glow began to filter through the fog, illuminating the air with an eerie luminescence that pulsed like a heartbeat. As they drew nearer, a vast lake appeared, stretching out like a mirror beneath the pale light of the moon. Mist Vale Lake. The waters shifted colour, a dance of pale greens, blues and silvers that seemed to respond to the unseen rhythms of the stars above. Rurik and Lira stood at the edge, captivated by its otherworldly beauty. The lake was still as glass, yet beneath the surface, shadowy shapes moved in strange patterns, forming and dissolving like dreams that vanish with the dawn. It was as though the lake held the fragments of stories and lives, reflections of the past hidden beneath its tranquil facade. "This is a place of magic," Lira whispered, as if speaking too loudly might wake something ancient and watchful. Rurik's gaze was fixed on the water, his brow furrowed in thought. "They say Miss Vale Lake can show us what lies within," he murmured half to himself. "To drink from it is to see one's soul." They exchanged a glance, a moment of shared apprehension and understanding. The journey had brought them to this threshold, a place where they would be tested not by weapons or strength, but by the depths of their own hearts. Without another word, they filled small cups with the lake's shimmering water and drank. The taste was like cold starlight, sharp and strange, leaving a tingling sensation that crept through their veins, waking memories they had buried deep within. The lake began to ripple, and in its depths, images took shape. Rurik's reflection wavered, then transformed. He saw himself standing among his kin, their faces worn and weary, shadows of sorrow hanging over them like storm clouds. He saw the crumbling walls of his village, the hollow-eyed children, the elders who carried memories of better days like a weight too heavy to bear. A feeling of helplessness surged within him, a reminder of why he had embarked on this journey, of the burden he carried for his people. But alongside the sorrow, he saw something darker, a flicker of pride, a quiet desperation to be seen as the hero who had returned with salvation. The image faded, leaving Rurik staring into the stillness, shaken. The quest, he realized, had been as much about himself as it was for his people. Lira's reflection was no less revealing. In the waters, she saw herself wandering through a forest that grew sickly and thin, its trees twisted and grey, the underbrush strangled by creeping shadows. She reached out to touch a branch, but it crumbled under her fingers, turning to dust. Her heart ached, filled with an ancient sorrow that seemed as old as the earth itself. But beneath the sorrow was another truth, one she had refused to see. She had come not only to heal her home, but to prove herself worthy, to escape the shadows of her ancestors' legacy and carve a place of her own among her people. The lake revealed their hidden fears, their flaws. It was an unflinching mirror, showing them the parts of themselves they had long hidden, even from each other. They both withdrew from the lake, silent, each lost in the revelations it had offered. The mist rolled over the lake, obscuring the images, as if the water itself wished to return these secrets to obscurity. They stood side by side on the shore, a distance now lingering between them like an unspoken question. "It seems," Lira began softly, her voice hesitant. "It seems we both carry more than we thought." Rurik nodded, his face a mask of contemplation. "A quest like this, it tests more than just our strength. I didn't realize how much I needed to understand myself." A strange silence fell between them, filled with the weight of unspoken truths. They had each seen a piece of the other's soul, a fragile and raw understanding that left them vulnerable, unsure of how to proceed. Their purpose remained, But the journey had become more complicated. The path veiled not only by fog, but by the shadows within. Then, as if sensing the shift, the lake's surface grew still once more, returning to its ethereal calm. The path forward stretched along the shore, winding between the trees toward the heart of their destination. Rurik took a breath, heavy with the weight of what he had seen. But he did not falter. "We move forward," he said, his voice steady, but softer than before. "Whatever the lake has shown us, we don't turn back now." Lira met his gaze, her expression determined yet reflective. "Yes," she agreed, her voice carrying a newfound strength. "We face what lies ahead, together." They stepped forward, leaving the lake and its revelations behind. But as they walked, each was more aware of the other, a delicate trust forming between them as they ventured into the unknown, bound by the promise of the celestial pearl and the secrets the lake had revealed. Rurik and Lira travelled onward, the memories of Mistvale Lake lingering like shadows in their minds. The path grew steeper, winding through ancient woods and rocky slopes as if guiding them to a realm untouched by time. A hush settled over the land, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. The air was thick with an uneasy stillness, as though even the forest watched in silence. As they pressed forward, a faint shimmer appeared ahead, a hazy glow that seemed to hang in the mist. Shapes emerged from the spectral light, slowly coalescing into figures that moved with a grace both ethereal and unsettling. Rurik felt a chill crawl down his spine as he recognized them. The guardians of the mist. They were beings of half shadow, half light, their forms shifting and wavering, as if they were woven from fog itself. Eyes that gleamed like distant stars regarded Rurik and Lira with an intensity that seemed to pierce their very souls. The guardians were neither human nor creature. They were something older, bound to the land by ancient oaths and magic beyond comprehension. One of the guardians stepped forward, a figure draped in mist, its eyes the cold silver of moonlight. "Travelers of distant lands," it intoned in a voice that seemed to echo from deep within the earth. "Why do you seek the realm of the celestial pearl?" Rurik, feeling the weight of the guardian's gaze, took a steadying breath. "We seek the pearl for the wisdom it holds," he replied, his voice resolute. "We come with purpose, not greed." The guardian's eyes narrowed, and a silence followed that felt like the hush before a storm. "Purpose alone does not grant passage. You must prove yourselves worthy, for many have come before you, and most have failed." Another guardian appeared, this one slender and tall, its features veiled in shifting shadows. It spoke in a voice softer than the first, like a whisper carried by the wind. "To enter the dragon's domain, you must each face a trial. These trials will reveal what lies within your hearts, and will test the strength of the bond you share. Lira felt a shiver of apprehension, but nodded, her resolve unbroken. "We accept your trials," she said, her voice firm yet calm. The guardians raised their arms, and the air around Rurik and Lira grew dense, filled with an unnatural energy. The landscape shifted, blurring into shades of grey and silver, until they found themselves in separate realms, each facing their own trial, alone. Rurik's trial. Rurik stood in a vast cavern, the walls glistening with crystals that pulsed with a dim, ethereal light. He recognized the cavern. It was a place from his childhood, a sacred cave where dwarves came to seek guidance. But something was different. The air was colder, and shadows moved at the edges of his vision, whispering his name. From the darkness emerged a figure that looked like him, yet it was not him. This Rurik wore a crown of gold and carried a staff, his eyes gleaming with ambition. The reflection spoke, its voice a distorted echo. "You wish to be a hero, Rurik, to save your people and be remembered. But is it truly for them, or for yourself?" Rurik felt a stab of doubt pierce his heart. He had thought his intentions were noble, yet here was his own reflection, a twisted image of his desires laid bare. I seek the pearl for my people," he replied, his voice unsteady. "But perhaps I seek it for myself as well." The reflection smiled, a cold and knowing smile. "To be worthy, you must know yourself fully. Only by embracing both light and shadow can you find the truth." Rurik felt a surge of understanding, a realization that his journey was as much about confronting his own flaws as it was about saving others. As he accepted this truth, the reflection faded, and the cavern returned to darkness. Lyra's trial. Lira found herself in a forest, but it was twisted and shadowed, with trees that seemed to whisper secrets of ancient betrayals. The branches reached for her like skeletal hands, and a chill filled the air. She walked through the forest, each step feeling heavier, until she came upon a figure cloaked in darkness. The figure was familiar. It looked like her, but its eyes held a sorrowful wisdom, a reflection of her own fears. "You seek the pearl to heal the forest, to restore what has been lost," the figure said softly. "But are you certain it is the forest you seek to heal? Or is it yourself?" Lira faltered, her breath catching. She had never questioned her reasons, believing her quest to be selfless. Yet, faced with this reflection, she saw the depths of her own longing, a desire not just to restore her forest, but to prove herself worthy. Perhaps I seek to heal both," she whispered, her voice laced with uncertainty. The figure's expression softened, and it raised a hand as if in blessing. "Accept this truth, and let it strengthen you. Only by knowing one's heart can true healing begin." As Lira accepted her reflection's words, the dark forest faded, and she felt a renewed sense of purpose. When the mist cleared, Rurik and Lira found themselves back together, standing before the guardians. They exchanged a glance, each seeing a new depth in the other, a silent understanding of the truths they had faced. The guardian stepped aside, their eyes gleaming with approval. "You have faced your trials and emerged with wisdom," they intoned. "May this knowledge guide you, for the path ahead grows darker still." Rurik and Lira nodded, their bond strengthened by the trials they had endured. Together, they stepped past the guardians and into the unknown, knowing that whatever lay ahead, they would face it side by side. The land grew colder and more desolate as Rurik and Lira descended from the guardian's realm into a shadowed valley, where the air felt thick and strange. The trees here were old, their branches twisted and heavy with grey moss that seemed to absorb the sound, leaving an eerie quiet in its wake. It was as if this place had been forgotten by time, a valley suspended in an endless twilight. Ahead of them, a faint melody floated through the air, soft and haunting, like a memory half remembered. It came from nowhere and everywhere, blending into the whispers of the wind, drawing them forward. The song grew stronger as they ventured deeper, resonating in their minds like an echo of something long past, a tune that felt both familiar and distant. "This place," Lira murmured, her voice barely a breath. "It feels like stepping into a dream." Rurik nodded, his gaze shifting uneasily across the landscape. "Or a memory too heavy to leave behind." They continued, each step accompanied by the melody that seemed to pulse with the beat of their hearts. The air grew colder, and they felt a strange weight settling over them, like they were carrying not only their own thoughts, but fragments of other lives, other stories. Around them, shadows shifted and stretched, forming shapes that hinted at figures long lost. Warriors, wanderers, lovers, and friends, each drawn to the melody as if they were still searching for something they had never found. At the valley's center stood a grove of ancient trees, each one etched with symbols and runes in languages neither Rurik nor Lira could understand. The bark glowed faintly in the dim light, and as they touched it, a wave of emotion surged through them, a mix of sorrow, longing, and hope. Lyra's fingers lingered on the runes, and she felt a hum of music beneath her skin, a soft melody that resonated with her soul. She closed her eyes, letting the tune guide her thoughts. And in that moment, she was transported back to memories of her own. She saw herself as a child, running through the forest, her laughter mingling with the song of birds, her heart light and free. She remembered the joy of belonging, the warmth of the trees, and the comfort of their whispering leaves. But within that memory was a shadow, a sadness that she had carried, hidden even from herself. The forest had been her sanctuary, a place that accepted her without question. She realized in that quiet moment, that she had longed not just to heal the forest, but to protect it as it had once protected her, to prove herself as a guardian worthy of its secrets. Rurik, standing beside her, felt his own memories stirring, the weight of his people's hopes pressed upon him, the faces of his kin flashing before his eyes. He saw their worn expressions, the lines of worry etched into the faces of those who had endured too many seasons of hardship. He felt the burden of expectation, the unspoken desire for him to be the one to bring hope, to restore what had been lost. Yet, he also felt a pang of loneliness, a realization that he had chosen this path out of duty and longing alike. Somewhere along the way, his desire to help had intertwined with his own need for purpose, for a legacy. He glanced at Lira, a silent gratitude filling him for the companionship she had offered on this journey, a bond he hadn't known he needed. The melody swirled, louder now, as if sensing the truths they had uncovered within themselves. From the depths of the grove, shapes emerged, creatures woven from the music itself, their forms delicate and shimmering, like living notes brought to life. They moved in harmony, drifting between the trees, their song growing softer as they circled Rurik and Lira. One creature, its eyes like pools of starlight, came forward, its voice no louder than a whisper. The valley remembers all who pass through, every joy, every sorrow, every hope and dream. You who seek the celestial pearl must honor these memories, for the path you walk is not yours alone. Rurik and Lira bowed their heads, a quiet understanding settling over them. They had been given a glimpse of the past, a reminder of the countless lives whose stories lingered here, bound by a shared longing. The valley held fragments of souls, forgotten songs of love, courage, and loss, each one echoing the quest they now undertook. With a nod of thanks to the creatures of the valley, Rurik and Lira moved forward, the path opening before them. The valley fell silent once more, the music fading into a soft hum that seemed to vibrate within their hearts, a reminder of the lives they carried with them, lives that had never found the pearl yet, had left their mark on the land. As they climbed out of the valley, the melody still lingered, haunting and beautiful, a song they could not forget. Each note echoed within them, resonating with the truths they had uncovered, binding them to the journey and to each other. They stepped on to the final stretch of the path, knowing that the trials they had faced were not only tests of strength or courage, but a journey of self-discovery, revealing the bonds they had forged in the shadows of their own memories. Ahead, the dragon's domain awaited, shrouded in mist and mystery. But with each step, they felt more prepared, more certain of the purpose that had driven them into the heart of the unknown. For in the valley of forgotten songs, they had found the pieces of themselves they had long sought, guided by the music of those who had come before. The final leg of their journey led Rurik and Lira to a mountainside cloaked in shadows and mist. The air thick with a potent energy that pressed upon their chests. They could feel it, the presence of the dragon, an ancient power woven into the very rock and sky. Every step grew heavier, as though the mountain itself weighed their worth, testing their resolve with its steep, jagged path. Above them, a faint glow emerged from within a towering cavern, like a second moon nestled within the stone. A glow that could only be the light of the celestial pearl. They approached the cavern with cautious reverence, their breaths shallow as they entered its vast, echoing chamber. The walls glistened with an unearthly silver light, shimmering like stars caught in stone. In the center of the cavern lay the pearl, larger than they had imagined, its surface smooth and radiant, casting a soft glow that filled the room with a sense of peace and awe. And then they saw him. The dragon was a figure of immense beauty and strength, coiled around the pearl with scales that seemed to capture and refract the moonlight. Each scale held the depth of the night sky, an endless sea of stars that shimmered as the creature stirred. His eyes opened slowly, revealing orbs of molten gold that held the weight of centuries, filled with wisdom and weariness alike. Rurik and Lira stood motionless, their breaths caught as the dragon gazed upon them, measuring their worth with a gaze that seemed to pierce the very fabric of their beings. "Travelers," the dragon's voice rumbled deep and resonant, as though the mountain itself had spoken. "You have come far. Tell me, what do you seek of the celestial pearl?" Rurik, though still awed by the dragon's presence, found his voice steady and respectful. "We seek the wisdom of the pearl, to bring hope to our lands and to our people." The dragon tilted his head, his golden eyes narrowing as he regarded them with something close to sorrow. "Many have come before you, driven by desires noble and selfish alike. They sought the pearl's light, believing it would grant them answers, heal their wounds, or fulfill their longings." He paused, a heavy silence filling the chamber. "But tell me, what is it that you truly seek? Have you asked yourselves that in the quiet moments of your journey?" Lira met the dragon's gaze, her heart racing. She had come to seek healing for the forest, for her people's land. But now, standing here, her purpose felt more complex, layered with the truths revealed in the valley and the lake. "I thought I came to save my forest," she said softly. "But I realize now that I was searching for my own belonging, a place within my people's legacy." Rurik nodded, understanding in her words something of his own journey. "And I thought I came to save my village," he added, his voice quiet yet unwavering. "But I was also seeking to prove myself, to feel like I could be the hero they needed." The dragon observed them, a flicker of satisfaction in his gaze. The celestial pearl is not a tool to be wielded, he murmured. It is a mirror, revealing the depths of the seeker's heart. You have seen within yourselves. Embrace the shadows as well as the light. This is the true wisdom of the pearl, not in possessing it, but in understanding what it reveals. A silence followed, one that felt heavy with understanding and a strange, unexpected clarity. The dragon leaned closer, his massive form casting long shadows across the chamber. You have earned the right to choose. Take the pearl, and it will grant you knowledge beyond mortal ken, or leave it, and carry with you only the wisdom you have gained through your journey. The choice is yours. Rurik and Lira looked at each other, a moment of silent communion passing between them. They had journeyed together, faced trials that had tested not just their strength, but their very souls. And now, faced with the pearl, they realized that their search had already yielded something invaluable, a deeper understanding of themselves and of each other. Lira placed a gentle hand on Rurik's arm, a silent agreement in her touch. The journey itself was the answer, she whispered, her gaze steady on the pearl. The pearl belongs here, to those who may need it in the future, just as we did. Rurik nodded, feeling a weight lift from his heart. Then we leave it, as we found it. The wisdom we've gained is enough. The dragon's eyes gleamed with approval, his gaze softening as he unfurled himself from the pearl. He inclined his massive head, as though bowing to them, a gesture of respect from a creature far older and wiser than they could comprehend. Then you depart with a blessing, he intoned, his voice a low, rumbling benediction. May the light of the celestial pearl guide you, even from afar. And may the bond forged on this journey strengthen the paths you walk. A warm light enveloped Rurik and Lira, filling them with a peace that felt like starlight woven into their very souls. When it faded, they felt lighter, as though a part of the pearl's radiance had settled within their hearts. A quiet glow that would remain with them always. With a final nod to the dragon, they turned and left the cavern, stepping back into the mist-laden mountainside where dawn had begun to paint the sky with hues of soft gold and pale blue. The journey back would be long, but they felt no rush. Walking side by side in silence, each carrying within them the light of the pearl, a light not bound to any one place, for they had found what they were truly seeking, not in the pearl itself, but in the journey, the bond forged in trials, the understanding born of hardship, and the strength they had found within and beside each other. And as they descended the mountain, the sun rose higher, casting its light over the valley and lake below, marking the path that would carry them home.